G'day, Stephen Trooper Cody with another one of our videos, and there's been quite a few lately that have been the result of a subscriber request, and that's great because the requests have been absolute gems, have been bonza mate, cobber, and they have resulted in what I think are some great videos, and they must be because they've had a lot of views. So I had a new subscriber, Squibload. He went looking at a few of my videos and he saw the one I made about when I was part of a 3-day reenactment called Raising the Contingent, and it was a reenactment of September 1914 when the South Australians raised the first troops and light horse to go off to fight in World War I. In that, I recount the story of how one of those 3 days I'd been out doing some exercises with another guy. It was a stinking hot day. We'd been out riding, doing some riding exercises, and we were riding like this, just in our undershirts and braces. And after we'd done our exercises, we came to this low hill and we stopped, and we were just sitting there on our horses watching the guys doing drill practice. You've got to remember, these are reenactors. You could have accountants, bank managers, people that do work in shops, motor mechanics. These are just ordinary blokes having a bit of fun on the week on a 3-day event. So they might not be the fittest blokes, but there they are, out in full World War I uniform, with real guns, out practicing marching. Because we were going to put on a show for the public at the end of the 3-day event, and they had to be able to look pretty authentic with their march, halt, stand at ease, and all of that sort of thing. So they were having to practice this in the blazing sun, and it was bloody hot, cobber. So anyway, when it was all over and they were told, dismiss, go have a rest, we're sitting on our horses, and one of these blokes undoes his tunic and starts slouching up the hill, red in the face, pouring with sweat, looked like he was about to collapse. One bloke actually did faint during that practice, which was a great thing because then the World War I nurses that were there took him off and doctored him up, and so that was a great bit of real reenacting. But as this bloke comes up the hill towards us, he looks at us, and we're just sitting on our horses, and he looks at us and he says, "Gee, you light horse blokes have it easy." And that really hit me, because at the time I thought, this is exactly what would have happened in World War I. Blokes would have been trudging along in the sand in the Middle East, their pack and their rifle, and they'd have seen some light horse bloke on his horse, just rolling along, and they'd have thought, my God, those blokes have got it easy. So when Squibload saw this video, what he said was, "It's funny, Steve, because even today, you're going to find guys in the tank corps, the infantry are going to say, gee, you blokes in tanks have it easy." And he said, what they don't realise is that the blokes in the tanks are responsible for a huge amount of service and maintenance. Things that they have to do. You don't just stop the tank and set up a deck chair and sip a pina colada. You've got greasing, oiling, oil change, weapons checks. So much stuff you have to do. When I read that, I thought, sorry, because what he then said is, Steve, surely the light horse blokes had a lot of work to do with their horses. And so yes, there's the thing. You're in the infantry, you see the blokes swanning along on their horses and you think they have it good, but what did it involve? So, there are 2 sets of rules. One is pre-1914, and when it's pre-1914, every man was responsible for his own horse in the light horse. Once we hit 1914, it all changed, and so I'm going to talk about what happened 1914 and after. So what happened is that 1 hour before reveille, 1 hour before those infantry blokes get up, there's a call, stables. When the call of stables is made, all the light horse blokes have to get up 1 hour before everyone else. They go out to their horses. They are then split into 2. half of the blokes take the horses and exercise them. Exercise them gently to warm them up, like doing yoga or stretching exercises, not exercising them to make them sweat. We'll come to that later. This is warm-up. The other half of the blokes are responsible for cleaning the line, picking up the poo, making meals, getting the nose bags ready, and having everything ready so that when those horses come back, they can be fed. So that's what the other half of the blokes have done. During this time, other NCOs are tasked with the job of checking the line has been done properly. When the guys come back with the horses that have been exercised, the ones that have been ridden, so there's 2 horses to a man, the saddle's taken off, checked if the horse has worked up a sweat. If it has, it is toweled off before it is then allowed to come forward, tied to the line. Everything happens at the same time. When the horses are all lined up, then the order is given, feed horses. The nose bags are all picked up at the same time, brought forward, put on the horses, and they then start to eat. Lots of rules. When they come back from the exercise, they're not allowed to drink. They're going to have their tucker first. When they come back and they're tied to the line, every man is responsible for grooming his horse, and it has to happen in the army way, which is the horse is done in the army system. Feet first. After the feet, eyes, nose, check the mouth. Then the hock. After the hock, the legs. You've worked your way up the legs. After working your way up the head, you then come back to the head and finish the whole head. Then you do the body, then you do the mane, then you do the tail. That's when the NCO will give the order, feed, nose bags go on. When the horses are finished eating, then they're allowed to have a drink. This should all take about an hour. Then an officer comes along and inspects all the horses to make sure that the guys can be dismissed. Then the order is given for dismiss, and then the blokes can leave, having got up an hour before everyone else, to do whatever else has to be done before breakfast. It's not quite finished, because also at that point the farrier sergeant comes along. He is told if any of the horses have any issues that need to be dealt with. He inspects every horse. If a horse needs any shoe work done, the farrier sergeant instructs the shoeing smiths to do that shoe work. So that's the beginning of the day, and all of that is done by the blokes in addition to what an infantry bloke would have to do. So if you think, well, it's only an hour, well, it's not only an hour, because then what happens is, at the end of the day, you come back and you have a whole set of rules to follow yet again. When you come back, you can give your horse a drink when you first come back, but the bit must be out of the mouth, so you're just on the lead rope, bit out of the mouth, girth loosened, not sitting on the horse. Then the horse is allowed to have 10 gulps. Immediately after the ride, 10 gulps. Now I've measured Cody when he has drinks, we can talk about this some other time. He takes about 200 ml as per gulp. They're allowed to have 10, 2 litres. Then they're given their feed. Now, if you return to the line and it is close to dinner time, you're allowed the 10 gulps and you're allowed to give the feed. Then you're allowed to leave your horse and eat. This is not so much for the troopers eat. This is so the mess can close and clean up. The troopers are then allowed to go. The whole rigmarole, if I shouldn't call it rigmarole, I guess, but that whole procedure then follows yet again before you are finished with your horse. It's only whether or not it was close to dinner time, whether you get that break to have dinner and then come back to finish off all the cleaning and checking of the horse before the end of the night. I have to quote this, and this is from both the 1910 Light Horse manual I have and the 1914 manual, and it says, "A proper system of stable discipline is of the first imperative. It goes on to say, stable duties must never be allowed to sink to the level of a mere fatigue. What they're saying is, this shouldn't be like, oh, well, we've got to go up half hour polishing the brass. This should be a thing you love to do because you love your horse. You want to do it because you love your horse. So I groom Cody regularly, do the mane, do the feet. I do all this stuff. I don't come out here to do it begrudgingly. I come out here to do it because I love him and I want to do it. I want to make sure he's got no shit in his eyes, he's got no seeds in his gums, and that's how you had to be in the light horse. You did that 1 hour, all of that stuff you did because you loved it. So when I read out that quote, what it's saying is that you've got to enjoy doing this, and it is imperative to the efficiency of the light horse that your horse is in top form, tip-top condition. But you think that's all that the light horse blokes had in addition to the infantry? So also what there was a day picket and a night picket. So if you're on day picket, you had certain functions you were there all day, 12 hours, and certain functions you had to perform looking after those horses and making sure they were okay. And if you were on night picket, again, big differences as to what you did between day and night. But what is interesting is if you were on day picket consisted of 1 man per 60 horses. Things that were to make sure was, nobody came up petting the horses. Nobody came up and approached the horses. They're not pets. If they're in a position that all day they're going to be standing on the line, they are left the hell alone by everybody. What was another biggie? It screams at you. No smoking, ever, anywhere near the horses, near the horse line. The night picket was slightly different. Day picket, 1 man per 60 horses. Night picket is 4 men per 60 horses, but that is because at least it was split up into 2-hour shifts so that everyone knew who was doing what and when, but at 3 in the morning you weren't dog tired because you'd been standing there for 12 hours. It was done in 2-hour shifts. Pretty much the same thing applied, but one of the big rules in the handbook about night picket is to keep the horses calm and prevent stampede. The light horse actually used, you might think that's an American word, but the light horse actually used the word stampede, and they talk about when you're at a new location and it's new to the horses, there's the chance of stampede, and to be particularly aware of it and prevent it. Righto, so I think the key points to remember there is that stable duties were for 1 hour. They were an hour before reveille, for 1 hour at the end of the day, with slight difference in that you were allowed at least to have dinner if dinner was due. So that's what things that you had to do if you were on stable duties in your light horse, stuff you had to do that the infantry didn't have to do. And it's really interesting because that guy that looked up and said, gee, you guys have it easy. We did that 3-day thing, 3 days, I know. It was just 3 days. But we still did that the proper way. And what that means is, it was Australia, it was stinking hot during the day, it was freezing cold at night. An hour before the other blokes had to get up, we had to get up and go tend to our horses and get the rugs off them. They had rugs on where they were being kept. We had to get the rugs off them, feed them, muck them out. We had to do that all before breakfast. By the time we came up to get our breakfast, every bloke in the infantry was already lined up. We were the end of the line to get our breakfast. And at the end of the day, that guy said, gee, you light horse blokes have it easy. We still weren't actually dismissed from the area. And when the call came, righto blokes, that's it, go back, get ready for your dinner, then we rode off. back to where the horses were being kept. And then we did all the meals and we did everything. And when we came back to get our dinner, there was no queue. Why was there no queue? Everyone else had eaten, were in the mess tent, eating, most had finished. Luckily there was tucker left for us. But that just shows, yes, we didn't have to march in the blazing sun with a rifle, but we still had a few things to do that those other blokes didn't have to do. Okay, hope you liked the video. Thanks Squibload, appreciate you asking for that. Till next time, cobbers, cheers.